Hello, everyone, and welcome to the recording from the first Wellbeing Network session with myself, Dec McLaughlin Nutrition. And here's an entire overview of the talk that I presented yesterday. And I've also left in the questions of the audience. And these questions are a great opportunity to ask yourselves and really reflect on what for you is particularly important when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to the problems you're facing and how you can start to address them. The purpose of today is to look at these three core areas from the title. Long-term health, how to better manage your time, especially if you're particularly busy in lockdown. I'm really looking at the motivation and best strategies around asking for help. We all need help from time to time, and with nutrition, this is no different. I really hope that for anyone who's listening to this and is struggling with managing their time, is potentially stressed about their long-term well-being, and even looking at where to start with nutrition, I really hope that after this 30-minute session, you'll really have all the tools, strategies, knowledge, and confidence to get started. Who am I? I am Dec, and I'm founder of Dec McLaughlin Nutrition. I have a master's degree in medicinal and biological chemistry, and I'm also precision nutrition certified. I'm very passionate about the science behind what we eat. I'm really using this as an effective tool to help us to better understand where to go next and to have confidence actually in the information that we are learning. A really interesting anecdote on this point actually came during my university degree, and at the same time I was completing my nutrition certification. What I found particularly comforting was the fact that when I was doing one of my lectures, I was also looking at my nutrition notes, and as I looked from side to side, they were no different. And for me, this really speaks to the fact that with fitness, with health, well-being, it is based on science, and the more evidence we can fall back on, the better. I'm also working full-time. I'm currently on furlough as of this week, and I'm also finding better ways to balance my own time and getting used to working from home. As you can see, or maybe tell, I do my desk actually in my bedroom. So very much getting used to the new dynamic, and I hope you are getting used to lockdown as well. Interesting thing to come back to is asking ourselves why this session, why this topic. And when I was reaching out to Cash and the team, I really thought about something that affects many of us, and burnout being incredibly common. Interesting thing to ask yourselves actually is this something you've experienced recently or on repeats? And if so, how have you approached it in the past? Has this approach been effective? Has it been a short-term solution and you've fallen back into old habits? Really interesting statistic is around 25% of people say that they experience burnout at least once a month, which is quite a significant amount. And I really hope that we can tackle this head on. A bit of an icebreaker for yourselves today to almost get you warmed up for thinking about nutrition and learning is myth busting. And what to do if you're watching at home is answer true or false and see how many you can get right. Good to go? Excellent. A nice easy one to start with, or maybe not. We shall see. I had some really good answers for this one. Most people got it right yesterday. It was indeed false. And I suspect, based on the research that I've read, the misconception largely comes from the types of foods that you eat, especially late at night. And I think we can all resonate with having a bit more of a tendency to go towards less healthy snacks and more sugary, fatty foods. And this can often lead us to eating much more calories specifically than we might have hoped. I actually would recommend eating more carbs after 7. And one of the reasons for this is based on sleep. Kasia mentioned that he had a session on sleep this Tuesday as of recording, and a quick linked with nutrition, which you may have heard from this talk, is the release of melatonin and serotonin. And really interestingly, all you need to know is a higher intake of carbs helps with the release of both of these hormones. And these hormones are closely related to helping you sleep and really giving you a drowsy sensation. And I think we can all resonate with having a food coma now and then. I know I've had probably far too many in my time. Fantastic. Myth number 2. What does everyone think? Bit more of a mixed response for this one yesterday. It is false. From my interpretation of the nutrition research, really interestingly, I find and I've read that the most important factor, in all honesty, is dietary adherence. And with the number of meals per day, the misconception largely comes from the thermic effect of food, i.e., whenever you eat any foods, your body requires a certain amount of energy to digest it. And with this, it's quite easy to use this to justify having more meals. But with multiple studies and a lot of research done on this topic, they've found that there's no difference between 1 or 2 meals versus 3 or 4, even up to an extreme of 5, 6, and higher. One thing to think about is with the thermic effect of foods, interestingly, protein has the highest thermic effect of foods of all the food groups. And this can be a great way of giving your metabolism a small boost. Not a huge effect by any means, but something that helps. And last but not least, my personal favorite myth for today. Absolutely false. The guys yesterday were adamant about this one, and I completely agree. One thing to take away from this fact would be really focusing on flexibility and not letting yourself fall into the trap of being overly restrictive, and even thinking about the mindset behind it. And if you've ever heard of or tried the example of not thinking about a white polar bear, it's a really well used and well known thought exercise. And as soon as you say that, it's impossible not to think of it. And this really speaks for the impact that forbidden fruits and trying to overly restrict yourself has. And if you're the type of person who is a bit hard and very extreme with it, you actually find yourself eating more unhealthy foods. Competition time. Anybody who is listening to recording, and for anyone who watched it live, I am running the competition until the second session on the 2nd of July. All you need to do is share one thing you learned from this talk with friends, family, or colleagues on social media, any of the 4 social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter, using the hashtag RAHDMNutrition, and I'll be picking a winner very shortly. A few things to think about, which you're likely focusing on already. Numbers 2 and 3, I was especially keen to include to really get into the mindset of how best you can get the most out of today. And really be selfish, really think about what for you is particularly important, and focus on your why. Comes back to intrinsic motivation. I'm really thinking about for you what matters most. We all have different goals and different life situations, and don't be afraid to make it absolutely specific for you. And point number 3, I'm really passionate about helping people to not only learn but also put that into action. And with this, pick 3 things that are easy. It may sound counterintuitive, but I'll touch on this later on in this sense of really lowering the barrier to entry and using this as a positive way of gaining momentum. 3 core areas today, plus a Q&A that we did at the time. And with the Q&A, I'll be open to any questions via my social media channels or email as well. Important question to ask yourself based on this why side of things is why have you listened today? Why have you tuned into this recording? I'm really focusing on the purpose of this session for you and what you want to get out of it. Personally, for me, if I was watching, it would be much more about reinforcing my knowledge and helping to answer some questions I'd have about misleading information. Because I think that knowledge is absolutely empowering, because the more we can be confident in what we're doing with nutrition when it comes to planning, execution, refining, the more positive results we'll get. And here's my hope for you, for anybody listening, as the outcome. Why longevity? Why are we thinking long term? Why have I included this topic? For me personally, if I was to give my own why, it'd be really starting to think about getting quite deep actually, and being free from illness, which means that I can then be more productive in my business, in my work life, which means that I can better provide for family and friends, which means I can then be more present, which then means I can get much more fulfillment if I'm ever out socializing. And it really comes back to contentment and having a strong purpose to my life. And what you'll notice with this is I've really asked myself why a few times. And it's a great exercise based on motivational interviewing. What to do with this is start with asking yourself why once, then twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. By the time you get to the 5th repetition, you should find that you've got a really powerful reason behind why you want to take action. Starting with the why, now into the how. I've rather deliberately kept this simple with only 4 foods. And just to give you an illustration of the link between the science behind the foods that we're eating, I'm really starting to ask yourself, how many of these foods am I including in my regular intake? Leafy greens, always a popular choice, and spinach and kale specifically. Both are a rich source of vitamin A, C, and K, and they can also help to prevent against osteoporosis and inflammation. Berries, equally effective. They are rich in fiber, antioxidants, and they can also help with lowering cholesterol. Fatty fish, personal favorites, which are effective in helping protect brain health and even lowering your risk of heart disease. I've included omega-3 supplements just as a means of thinking about how best you can cultivate a safety net. And in an ideal world, we would all have the opportunity to prepare our own meals, organic ingredients, the highest quality foods. It's not always possible. And don't be afraid to supplement with a few different nutrients just to really make sure that you are covered. And as a Scot, I couldn't miss out on porridge oats. These are hands down one of my absolute favourite foods. Rich in fibre, antioxidants again, and specifically beta glucan. And this itself can also help lowering cholesterol. Focusing on the why, the how, and then now the what. I'm sure many of you have heard of or used SMART goals before. This, I think, is a very useful exercise for being specific. And the more you can move away from general goals such as I want to get fit or I want to be healthier, it's not particularly useful. Whereas if you have something that is absolutely pinpoint precise, it can really help with taking action, knowing exactly where you're headed, and also changing course if you need to. As an example, on the topic of longevity, if you're looking to stay at a healthy weight by age 55, or who knows, even run a marathon, that's something that is time-bound, relevant, attainable, measurable, and most importantly, specific. On this point, setting a long-term vision can be quite overwhelming at times, especially if it's a goal that is ambitious, it's lofty, it really stretches your abilities. What to do with this is break it down and start actually with really easy, almost impossible not to do tasks on a daily basis, such as keeping to a healthy weight, for instance, 80 kilograms. And with this, you can literally focus one day at a time. And this is a brilliant way of building up almost a stacking effect. Each time you complete your daily habits, daily tasks, this builds up. And by the time you get to weekly, monthly, annually, potentially, you really got a solid foundation to give you that positive momentum. And tying into this really closely is trying your best to move away from motivation. Motivation is not reliable. We've all had different spurts at different times where we're feeling great. Often January, classic example where you have a bit of time off over Christmas, maybe overindulge potentially, which is fine. We're all human beings. And then when it comes to the start of the year, you're incredibly motivated. You want to do everything. You want to change your entire lifestyle. But such is the pace of this change. It's not sustainable more often than not. And actually, it really fails to account for you being busy, having a family to look after, changing jobs, moving homes, any of these different factors. Whereas with discipline, you can set yourself some non-negotiables. And non-negotiables are tasks or habits or to-do lists that get done, even when you're feeling tired, especially actually when you're feeling tired. And this could be as simple as getting your water intake for the day, hitting your number of home workouts, and even actually checking in with a friend or a coach to keep you accountable. To wrap up the first section, thinking about different foods that we can eat and the why behind it, and really focusing on any blind spots. So if you're somebody who has a good fiber intake, that's great, but you're actually lacking in healthy fats and omega-3s, this is something worth considering. Leading on from this, thinking about how you can really start to be specific and also time-bound with your goals. Give yourself a deadline. If it's open-ended, it's very easy to procrastinate and never get started. And on this point, really, really lower the barrier. And I genuinely mean it when I say make it as easy as possible. Make it so small, it's almost laughable when it comes to new habits. And it could be as simple as a 10-minute walk a day, which in itself, you know you can do. And it's not about a 10-minute walk. It's about a 10-minute walk that you do over time consistently. By the time you get to a month, that is 300 minutes, if not longer. And that's a really good way of thinking about the stacking effect. Topic number 2, something I think many of us can relate to in lockdown, the chaotic, minimal breaks, constantly on culture that we really have cultivated over the last short while and longer, in all honesty. I included this to really think about on this point of simple tasks or habits that just give us a solid routine and a bit of structure. The one I would highlight actually would be the morning activity and walking. And people may have done this already. One thing I would recommend if you're open to it and have time is almost emulate a morning commute in the sense of giving yourself more separation between before your working day and when you get started. And what I mean by this is I literally would go for a 30-40 minute walk in the morning, literally leave my flats and come back. And when I come back, it's almost that mindset of coming into the office and really switching on and focusing. And we had some great examples yesterday. It sounded like everyone attending was already nailing it. Plenty of HIIT workouts, high intensity intervals, stretching routines, morning workouts at 6 a.m, morning walks. Very impressed. And this is a really hot topic when we start to look at working and how focused we are and how much we can get done per day. 2 things to look out for, almost like pillars of success, are sleep and brain food. And I'll touch on this lightly. I'm conscious that I'm no sleep expert, but having said that, there's a really strong link with nutrition. And if you're looking for a reason why to really aim for 7 hours and more, once you get below this, once you get towards 6 hours and even less actually, your hormonal health is impacted significantly. And the two hormones specifically with this are ghrelin, which increases. And the more ghrelin you have, the more hungry you are. And in the opposite sense, as a double whammy, your leptin will decrease. And leptin, the higher leptin is, the better your appetite is managed. And when it's lowered, it's much more difficult. And this is why you may find that when you're tired or your sleep's been disrupted, your nutrition is often the first thing to suffer. And specifically on the tip side of things, I would recommend looking at your caffeine. And interesting fact to add today for the recording is caffeine has a half-life of about 6 hours. What this means is if you have a coffee, let's say a double espresso at 12 p.m., by 6 p.m. you still have a single espresso's worth in your body, in your bloodstream. And if you actually think about even having later in the day, if you have a coffee at 3 or 4 p.m., this then turns into 10 p.m. And this would be equivalent of drinking a single shot of espresso when you're trying to get to bed. And it's a bit of a negative cycle. And this is something that I think can help dramatically. And tying this closely into food, the two I would really focus on and highlight would be walnuts. They are rich in DHA, which is a type of omega-3, and this has a really strong positive effect on brain performance. And in a similar sense, if we touch on caffeine again briefly, green tea. Green tea is a great alternative to coffee in the afternoons. And out with the caffeine side of things, it's also rich in polyphenols, which can reduce inflammation, and the antioxidant EGCG, which helps to prevent cell damage and keep you healthy and fighting fit. Meal planning. Time is short and time is money, as they say. The overarching message I would give is work smart, not hard. And I think we've all seen the videos online of people prepping 5-6 meals at a time, spending 4 hours in the kitchen, incredibly complicated recipes. You don't have to do that. And I would recommend really focusing on experimenting. And what works for you, works for you. We all have different responsibilities, jobs, families to look after. And with this, to make it as easy as possible, keeping a well-stocked pantry is critical. On this point, this really ties into food environment and making it as easy as possible to stick to a healthy intake. And with this, you may notice, and I myself absolutely have, if you have a lot of snacks and biscuits and chocolate and whatever else easily available in your cupboards, lying around the kitchen, it's so difficult to not eat it, for lack of a better description. And the great thing about this is you can actually not only reduce that, you can also make it easier to have healthy foods. For instance, you could leave out a fruit bowl with fresh fruit and veg. You could really stock up on this with your fridge, even in your freezer. And the more you have to hand, the lower the barrier to entry, and the more likely you are to stay consistent. On this point, here's a few foods I would recommend looking out for, and a lot of these you can really stock up on. Coconut oil is an absolutely fantastic cooking ingredient, really rich source of vitamins and good quality healthy fats, all the way down to peanut butter, personal favorite. I'm really thinking about what fruits and veg you can keep buying consistently and make sure you don't run out of. And for everybody listening today, everybody who registered, I have sent over a meal ebook, a recipe ebook for myself, a freebie as a thank you for your support and for tuning in. I really do appreciate your time. And I really hope you enjoy the recipes. Please post your pictures. Let me know how you get on with these. These are honestly delicious. I know I'm biased, of course, but that is a thank you from me. And wrapping up section 2, really focusing on you. And it's not a one size fits all, absolutely not. Keep trying, keep tweaking, keep refining what you're doing. And tying into this with your sleep, obviously, set yourself a minimum. 7 hours for me would be the minimal requirements to really keep yourself as healthy as physically possible. And that's most of the science and the really in-depth information. I want to start thinking about mindset. And if you're somebody who is struggling a bit now with your eating and with your fitness, how can you get help? What's the best way to reach out to others? And what's the best approach? What's the best way to think about it from your own perspective? And what I would highlight from this slide is language. And if you're somebody who uses a lot of shoulds, or I need to, or puts yourself under pressure, can often be quite counterintuitive because it's quite harsh and it's very unforgiving of yourself, and it's almost like speaking to other people. And I think this is a good stance to take. Imagine your thoughts are you speaking to somebody. If you're rude and forceful and unforgiving, the other person is very unlikely to be motivated to do what you wanted them to do. However, if it's very open-ended and positive, and I could do this, and I can, and I've got the ability to, and it's my choice, I have the say in this, it's a much more positive approach. And in a similar sense, asking yourself questions instead of why can't I do this, it could be who can I reach out to help, or what information do I need to get started with nutrition, or how can I turn a potential negative into a positive, such as if you had a bit of a mess up at the weekend, overate or drank too much or whatever it is, take it as a positive and say, what can I learn from this and how can I do it differently next time? And leading on from this, really thinking about who you can reach out to. And with this being proactive rather than simply letting it happen when it comes to your support group, this is something that you can cultivate. And if you're proactive about it, you can really develop a strong network of people who will support you. And the more people you let know about your goals with fitness, nutrition, even mindset, the better, because with this, you can really develop a strong accountability system that you can fall back on. It could be, doesn't have to be a coach per se, it could even be a sports club, a running club, even reaching out to a trusted friend or family you get on well with. And it goes both ways. You can also be the person to hold them accountable and lift both of yourselves up. And that in itself is very motivational. Specific tip, if you're open to betting, may sound like an odd suggestion. However, it's very much a good way of avoiding losing something, money specifically. Obviously, I would never suggest betting away anything you can't afford, but an effective strategy for really forcing yourself into action could be to say, if I don't reach goal X by 2 months' time, I need to pay you this amount of money. And a great tip I heard on this was make it an amount that is enough that's uncomfortable, and an amount that really spurs you to avoid it. And it might be the kick or the boost you need to get going. To wrap everything up, coming together with the mindset side of things is looking at small positive change you can make. And you may resonate with some of the fixed mindset quotes, such as I'm good at something or I'm not, or I do tend to give up and I get frustrated easily. You can flip it on its head, and naturally easier said than done. But these are small steps, and these small steps are changes in how you approach nutrition, fitness, your general health really do add up. And the more you can repeat the positive phrases, such as every time I mess up, I can learn from it, I can grow from it, I can achieve anything, I can learn anything if I put my mind to it. And these things, as small as they seem, are incredibly important. And to wrap up the third and final section, 3 things to really think about: how you speak to yourself, building a strong network that goes both ways. You can be the teacher, but you can also learn, and in the opposite sense. And really thinking about small steps you can take. It may be really, really minute, and it may sound like an easy step to take with thinking about things in a positive sense, but it's almost a fake it till you make it scenario where the more you do that, the easier it is to think about these thoughts naturally. And asking yourself at home, what was your favorite takeaway from today? What was your highlight? What for you was an interesting fact or a message that really resonated? Let me know. Please, I'm always open to hearing about what you enjoyed most, social media and via my email. Would be delighted to hear from you. And ask me anything. We had a live Q&A during the session on Thursday, 18th of June, but I'm always open for any questions you have, and it really helps me too. Helps me understand better where everyone is at and problems or obstacles that they want to tackle most. Take away anything from today. Here's a few highlights that I would recommend thinking about. The most important of these is be flexible. You yourself have a unique life situation, experiences, cooking levels, budget, responsibilities. Really focus on what works around your lifestyle and not the other way around. And a huge thank you for joining me. These are the areas you can find me. Dec McLaughlin Nutrition on all the main social media channels, and would be delighted to hear from you. Please reach out and say hello. And if there's anything you want help with furthermore with nutrition, I would be delighted to do so. And thank you again for listening. I really do appreciate the time and the support. And I look forward to the second session on the 2nd of July, where we'll be thinking about how we can inspire others and really focusing on the motivation and a bit of leadership, how we can help others to make positive changes. Thank you again for listening. I really do appreciate it, and I will speak soon.